Hello, Pile 1, and welcome to this reading, Self-Sabotage Revealed. Before we get into the reading, a couple of disclaimers, the first of which is that I cannot make up any truths, which means that if I say something that is simply not true for you, please don't try to force it to your reality. It is simply what I said that isn't applying to you. Very likely is something that is meant to help someone else tuning into this reading. Whatever isn't for you, just let it go and just don't let that negate the rest of the reading. The second disclaimer is that I cannot make decisions for you. I am a stranger on the internet. You don't know me. I don't know you. I have no right or the right context or authority or knowledge, context to make decisions for you. That's something that you have to do for and by yourself, and a tarot reading can help clear up any confusion that you might be having in your feelings or thoughts regarding a decision that has to be made, but ultimately the decision has to be yours to make. Don't let anybody, let alone a stranger on the internet, make decisions for you. These things being said, let's get into your reading. Now, the first thing that I want to say is that, well, this first half of the reading is basically a dive into the sabotage itself, who you are, what it is that you're sabotaging, and an elaboration on these things. The second half with these cards down here will be the advice on how to address this sabotage, self-sabotaging. And these cards are very clearly saying that there is very clearly something that you have access to. It's coming through very kind of obviously with the cards that came out as something kind of a cult. Maybe not a cult, but it's like you have this, let's call it spiritual. It's kind of a spiritual wealth or a spiritual abundance, a spiritual stability that you have access to, that you then self-sabotage by not engaging with it, by not taking advantage of it, or by refusing to pursue the necessary path to properly hone this thing that you have access to. Now, again, like I said, it is coming through because of the cards that came up. It is coming through as something spiritual, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could very well be like a wealth that you have access to, resources. It could be money. And if not money, then just something that you have available to you that you just don't take advantage of. And what is coming through as the reasoning behind why you hesitate to take advantage of this is a lack of maturity. And that's really clearly being said. Out of all the things that are kind of up in the air and that could be kind of, it could be this, it could be that, what is clear is that there is something available to you, and that because of your lack of maturity, you're not taking advantage of it, you're not pursuing it, you're not grabbing it for your own benefit. And so let's get into the specific cards before I go any further. We start with protection, and this deck, the Oracle deck, is called the Sacred Symbols Oracle deck. And while I was shuffling that deck, I was asking the specific question of what is the blessing that you're negating, the blessing that you self-sabotage, or not necessarily the blessing, but what it is that you're self-sabotaging. And over here on the other side, we have who you are in regards to how you're handling this said thing, the protection or the blessing, or well, it's protection, but the blessing, whatever it is that you're self-sabotaging. And the rest of the cards here, the tarot and this other oracle deck, being an elaboration on the matter. So with protection, yes, can be like a literal thing like armor or a security system. But here, it's sacred symbols, right? We're doing tarot, and protection and this circular symbol here, it feels like a spiritual protection. So if you are someone who is of faith, meaning that you are, you're devoted, you make conscious efforts towards a relationship in faith, whatever that is for you. And when that happens, if you know what that's about, then you know what comes with that, the peace and the protection, the spiritual protection that comes with that. If everything that I just said makes no sense to you, the protection here is that wealth, that thing that's available to you and how that is kind of like not a protection per se. Maybe like, okay, one of the things that I'm getting, if it's not money, is like a property, maybe a home. I don't know. Just it doesn't necessarily have to be a home, but just something that like is there. And so it's not like if it's a property, a property doesn't really protect you from things, but because it is a resource that you can kind of turn into an income, it can be a protection from, let's say, scarcity or from financial lack, to just leave it that way. And over here on the other side, Child Divine, in its light attribute, that it's coming up in its light attribute really dictates to me, or really highlights to me, just how positively held you are by the universe. And if not by the universe, well, yeah, even if you're not of faith, you are held by the universe, and that's indicated by this blessing that you have. Whatever the case is, that it's coming up in its light attribute really says to me that it's not a nefarious thing. It's not that you're being bad or a failure in some way by not taking advantage of this. It's just that you don't have the necessary experiences, or the right data, the right knowledge, you haven't experienced the right things for you to clearly see what a blessing this thing really is. And that's the self-sabotage. It's not so much that you're doing something well, okay, no, there is something. It's not something that you're doing that gets in the way of this thing. It's rather clearly a lack of action, a lack of effort, a lack of reaching for this thing that you have available to you. And Child Divine in its light attribute reads, innocence, purity, and redemption. Suggests a special connection with the divine. So again, if you are of faith, then this card is clearly saying that it's not that you're being punished, it's not that you're being bad, it's not that you're being judged in a bad way. It's just that, your guides, divinity, whatever you believe in, they're gently nudging you, letting you know that you're kind of sticking to your comfort zone a little too much. And that, in fact, there is so much to be gained. There is so much to grow outside of that comfort zone. And that, like a child, there comes a time when you have to grow up. Now, other cards that indicate this maturity, there's pretty much all of them. Maybe except, well, no, literally all of these 6 cards are all about maturity. And let's get into why. You don't have to have watched or even like these cartoons. I'm the one who knows them, and I'm the one who's interpreting them. Leave any criticisms of these shows out of my comments. I will delete them because this is just not the space for that. But with Lapis, the character, she is a character who goes through tremendous amounts of character development. All of the characters do, really. But the point of Lapis, really not the point, but like one of the really important aspects of Lapis is just how powerful she is. Incredibly deeply powerful, but her emotions get the best of her very often, and because she has that a lot of unresolved emotions and things that she just refuses to deal with, her power kind of gets cut. It doesn't get cut off per se, that never happens, but it's that's how she gets bested. And it's not that she's a villain, she kind of starts out that way and then eventually becomes a friend, but towards the end, the point is that she learns self-control and a different type of strength that isn't a demonstration of power, but a strength that is rather a regulation of emotion. So I'm not really getting a lot of other emotional aspects with these cards, but rather how for this character, her emotions were this hurdle that she had to really grapple with, and in doing so, in grappling with these repressed emotions and all of these things that she was refusing to deal with, she matured. And there is a very clear lack of an immaturity that is displayed in her character at the beginning, that she's then reminded of towards the end, that she then gets to confront, not with herself but with other characters who are acting like her at the beginning, and she gets to interact with who she used to be, basically. And so she gets to see herself immature as the person she has become now that she's matured. So that card by itself speaks to a lot of maturing. Daphne, Scooby-Doo character, classically regarded as the damsel in distress, but more modernly interpreted, put out as, on some occasions, more of a, she's more involved in the case solving. She's not so much of a damsel in distress. Feminism has done a lot for film. We still have a lot of work to do, but you get what I'm saying. Because of the progressions that we've had in film and TV in regards of like characters, Daphne is now portrayed as kind of like less ditzy and more involved, a little bit more dexterous and resourceful. In fact, in like there's a Halloween movie that they put out, and I'm feeling comfortable mentioning the Halloween movie because it's Halloween, or I'm doing these readings for Halloween. Doesn't matter when you watch them. They at the end they basically clear cut that it's Daphne who's the leader of the gang. That Fred's just kind of there to drive, but he's always regarded her as the leader. So it's kind of almost like in some interpretations of Scooby-Doo, she's an actual leader. So it's not as direct as like with the first character, Lapis, where it's part of her story to mature, but rather for Daphne as a character, and with Scooby-Doo being interpreted as time goes on so many different times, she's maturing as with the times. So that idea of being current with what's necessary or what's not expected of you at this current time, but rather what's possible for you at this current time. Where in the past, Daphne being the leader of Mystery Incorporated wouldn't have really been possible because of the misogyny that existed when this show first aired back in the 60s. And where now, because of what's possible, she can now be regarded as the leader. So like for yourself, in the past, you might have regarded yourself as someone incapable of handling these blessings and these resources, whatever it might be that's being available to you. But you're now being called to really take note of what you are capable of. Lapis is also, with that power that she represents, Lapis and also the 9 of Pentacles here underneath it really accentuate how deep and heavy this blessing, this power, these resources really are. But I digress. With Shaggy over here on the other side, he's generally the most immature character, and not in a bad way. Even when he's immature, it's not in a way that annoys you. It's just in a way that like he's just genuinely a scared little kid, and he's constantly reminding you of that. So it's again that gentle nudge, or that gentle message from the universe, basically saying like, you have Daphne energy, you have Lapis energy, you have power, you have what it takes to really meet your current circumstance. But you're acting like Shaggy. You're acting scared. And the thing about Shaggy is that even if you don't watch this show, it doesn't really matter, or if you've never watched the Scooby-Doo thing, the point of Shaggy is that he is a coward until properly motivated. And it usually involves food, but sometimes it's because his friends are in danger. And so he'll grasp his cowardice and go into whatever needs to be done, even though he's scared. And that's courage. So not only a maturing, but also because maturing is one thing. Maturing is something that happens gradually and naturally as we pursue, our goals and life itself, as we kind of go through, as life kind of develops and we develop with it. But courage is a different thing, because courage means that there is an actual fear, something that is, it's not just, so at this, okay, Shaggy's then touching on how it's not just that you haven't had the necessary experiences for you to genuinely see what's in front of you. It's also a bit of fear. And part of that fear could be in the fear of maturing. And it doesn't matter how old you are. Like, we are in a constant state of maturing and of progression. And especially as, like, you're here tuning into a tarot reading, which means that to some degree, you are interested in your own progression, in your own betterment. And so, like, to those of us who know that, like, that requires courage. That requires that you have some sense of a comfort with discomfort, because it is uncomfortable to recognize that the changes that we have to make. And okay, I'm getting into like, the journey and, our progression, and, that's true. If that's true for you, and if it's not, don't worry about that. But my point with Shaggy, what I'm trying to say with Shaggy, what I'm really getting with Shaggy is, if you feel scared in any way, shape, or form in regards to this blessing, these resources, and or maturing, becoming the person necessary that required to handle this blessing, these resources. Here, these cards are basically saying there's no need for you to be scared. If you're afraid that you're going to lose your sense of innocence, or like if you grow up, you're never gonna, it's just too much and you'll never be able to relax again. Child Divine here coming up in its light attribute. Because if it would, like, honestly, in a self-sabotage reading, I would have fully expected this to be coming up reversed, and you would have been lashed. Basically, what does it say? Shadow attribute, an inability to defend oneself against negative forces, calling you childish, basically. But no, it's coming up upwards, which it's like there's no lashing, there's no harshness here. So it's not that you being scared is a bad thing. In fact, it's a natural response to fear. But you're being reminded that you are held, that you are protected in whatever way you actually need. So what that's clearly saying, what I'm getting from that, is whatever it is that you're afraid of. And if this whole message of courage and fear isn't really applying to you, disregard this. This is only for those of us who are feeling scared, who are feeling anxious and hesitant to pursue this thing for whatever reason. The cards are basically saying that that specific thing that you're afraid of, whatever is protecting you, whether it's divinity, and if it's not that, the resource, it's going to take care of you. There's nothing for you to be afraid of. If it's like a fear that, if you mature, you're never going to be able to relax again, that's simply not true. In fact, there could be new levels of relaxation that you could achieve by pursuing this thing. And yeah, it might mean that in order to gain these new levels of relaxation, these new levels of blessings, it might require a little bit of work. It might require a bit of discomfort, leaving that comfort zone that we're talking about. But that's kind of why I was getting into that whole thing of like the journey and, the comfort with discomfort. Shaggy here is basically saying that you're no stranger to, one, being scared, but also, two, the application of courage. So if you need to apply courage, step as confidently as you can. And sometimes when we're scared, stepping confidently does mean shaking and crying and sobbing and throwing up, but doing it anyway, moving through that scary process anyway. To get into the tarot cards, and this is where it gets a little bit of a lashing, a little bit of a, okay, let's shape up a little. The Nine of Pentacles is, okay, listen, if you're a tarot reader, don't yell at me. I'm just interpreting here, and this is just something that I do with my practice and it works for me. The nines in the minor suits, to me, come through as the most amount that you can have of whatever that suit is. So the Nine of Pentacles, to me, generally would represent the most amount of pentacles that I can have. I know that the 10, there's always a 10, the 9 isn't the most, but in numerology, the digits are, 0 through 9, there is no 10. So that's one part of it. But also, to me, the 10s represent not the most, but the totality, the completeness of that suit. So the pentacles representing the physical realm. The pentacles also being about money, sometimes behavior. The 10 of Pentacles, to me, then, would be the totality of the physical realm. The totality, the complete amount of money that we could have. And, in the traditional Coleman Smith imagery, we have like generations of wealth. So not just the most amount of money that one could have, but that, generations could have. So just, I don't know, I'm putting that out there, but the 9 here to me indicates the most amount of pentacles that one can have. The most amount, Pentacles again, a coin, money, the most amount of money that one could have. Now, if the blessing that we're talking about, protection, is spiritual, go with me along with this metaphor, this money metaphor. And if for you protection isn't resources, something actually tangible, something that is something about money, then this isn't a metaphor so much as what we're actually talking about. The point is, the most amount of money that one could have that is a safety net. That is most of your troubles being taken care of. Like, yeah, money can't buy health, and money, yes, it can buy happiness if you've never had a lot of money, if you've known a lot of scarcity. Yeah, it can buy you happiness because it creates stability that you can then build off of whatever you want, basically. So that's what I'm interpreting from the Nine of Pentacles. The most amount of money, basically wealth, this wealth that is available to you, it is that much. So if it's a spiritual thing, there is definitely at least someone here for who I'm getting this message for, where it's an inheritance thing, not money. Like, you have spiritual gifts that you have earned from your bloodlines, or bloodline, whatever the case is. And maybe it's because you feel the strength of that is why you hesitate with it, to hesitate to engage with it. The point, what the Nine of Pentacles is saying to me about that is, when it's there, whether you're ready for it or not, it's going to be there whether you engage with it in this life or not. It's there. And so if it's not a spiritual thing for you, leaving that specific message for whoever that's for, that's true for all of you. Like, whatever this blessing is that you're not really engaging with, it's big, it's huge, it's enough for you to make you feel safe. But how are you reacting to it? The Emperor reversed, the Emperor upwards. I mean, think of the olden days when there were emperors, and I mean, even or shows where there are emperors. 9 times out of 10, an emperor isn't. He's gonna be some type of colonizer. He's gonna be some type of conqueror. He's gonna go out and gain more for his empire. He's an emperor because he has more than one kingdom. So he's not satisfied with just having what was given to him. He needs to go out and get more. That is ambition. That is drive. That is, I want it, I get it. So, I want it, so I get it. And so the Nine of Pentacles with the Emperor, regardless of it, whether it's reversed or not, indicates how that's the type of abundance that is there for you, the type of abundance that you could go out and gain more with. It is the type of abundance that could help you with your ambitions if you have them. But reversed, then, it's not engaged. It's not wanting. It's maybe not a lack of ambition. Maybe you do have ambition, but then there's no drive. There's no actual effort put into pursuing this thing, taking advantage of this blessing. And so that's coming up reverse. The Emperor is coming up reverse. I kind of see it as an empty throne, and the throne is yours, and it's waiting for you, and it's there again whether you engage with it or not. And you're just not there. You just don't want to sit there. That's just not something that you want. The Hermit, and I love the symmetry here, because the Nine of Pentacles on one side, and on the other side the Nine of Majors, the Hermit. So the abundance here is incredible. Like, because 9, again, I know it's the majors, so we're not applying that interpretation of the most here, but still, just I'm taking it here because we got the 9 on the other side, and so there's that symmetry. So I'm kind of just stretching that interpretation a little bit. But okay, the Hermit. I mean, the Hermit typically depicts an older man, or an older person, which is why generally the Hermit is a representation of maturing, of growing old and gaining wisdom. In fact, in old tarot decks, the Hermit is interpreted, or rather called, Father Time, because it's meant to, in some regards, the Hermit does represent the passage of time, the long passage of time, and how we mature over those long passages of time. So whether physically, just physically, but also if we're going through experiences and learning from them, maturing internally as well. So I'm getting two things from the Hermit responding to the Emperor reversed. On the one hand, since the Emperor is an empty throne and the Hermit is someone who moves from home and leaves home to go gain maturity somewhere else, that idea of leaving, going somewhere else, next to the idea of an empty throne, one of the things that I'm getting from these two cards is how busy you keep yourself from this truth, from this blessing. And that might indicate just how prevalent it is in your life, just how present it is, just how big it is, which again, we've been saying with the nines and everything else, that this is a big thing. And so it is difficult for you to run away from it, but here you are trying anyway. And okay, so that's one thing that I was getting, how you do keep yourself consistently running away from this. And shouldn't that tell you that you're not going to be able to get away from it? But, okay, I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to give you a reading. The Hermit is also indicating to me this is part of me. I'm applying the pentacles because the symmetry of 9-9 and the pentacles being about the physical realm, and so here I'm interpreting it as a physical body kind of. The Hermit here after the Emperor reversed, if you do not put any actual action to take advantage of this blessing and or resources, you run the risk of I'm skipping ahead a little. There's more to this blessing than you're realizing. The point of this blessing, whatever it is that that's not the point. The blessing itself, what you're regarding as this blessing or resource, that is only the tip of the iceberg. That is only the present wrapped up with a bow. You haven't actually seen what's inside of it. You haven't actually seen what the whole point of you having access to this resource, to this blessing is. The point of it is that as you interact with it, as you engage with it, as you go through life and through the world with this thing in tow and you doing the thing, that's the point. The person that you will become, the life that will develop as you're engaging with this blessing, with these resources, that's the point. And if you do not engage with those things, you will get the bad ending, so to speak. I'm not trying to fearmonger, I'm not trying to scare you, but the Hermit being an old man at the end of the Emperor reverse. So if you do not fulfill this throne, this seat here, this, you coming here and taking advantage of this thing, cool, you're gonna grow old and you'll never know any of these things, and that'll just be completely unavailable to you. And that is your own prerogative. Like, if that's what you want to do, cool, click off of this reading and just go do your thing. But the thing is, you haven't clicked off quite yet, regardless of the fact that I have continuously told you you're not engaging with this thing, which means to some degree you kind of want to. And that's why I'm delivering that message of the Hermit being that possibility of growing old with never knowing just how much is available to you. And because it means that, it also means if you do take advantage of this, if you do engage with it and accept it, then just wait and see what's going to happen, where you end up in life. Now, that already is such a positive ending to just this half of the reading, which is all about the self-sabotage that you engage with. And we still have the advice for you. So let's get into that, because I think that's all I have to say about these cards. Let me put these away so that I can put the other ones up. Okay, so the advice is pretty clear-cut. And I'm going to kind of word it in a way that it's addressed kind of directly to those of you for whom this blessing is something financial, is something of a physical, tangible kind of thing. But it can be applied to the rest of you. Point blank, Okay, if there is a fear that with this wealth accumulating, with you having access to this money, if you're afraid of how people are going to act, it could be even your family. You're afraid of how family is going to treat you, or you've seen the horror stories, you've heard the horror stories of what happens when people get rich, and the ways the ways that people around them get crazy because of that money. It could be kind of like that, or it could be that there are actual people in your life that will take advantage of that. The point is to keep it a secret. There is something in all of these cards of one, keeping this blessing very separate from your everyday life, basically keeping it a secret, and vetting very carefully and intentionally who can have access, maybe not to your wealth, but to you, who has access to your life, and making sure that you're getting to know these people as best as you can. Just because the truth of the matter is, because of the world that we live in, wealth does make people act differently. Just what it is. So that's like, if you're feeling that fear, totally understandable, and it's being picked up here. And you're being basically told that you're not entirely wrong about that fear, and that you should actually be a little careful as to who you're welcoming, who you're letting into your life, and or who you're sharing that wealth with. And if it's not that this is something financial for you, and mind you, if this is something where I was going to say that that's all I have to say if this is a financial thing, but no, I guess what I'm about to say, which is more of the spiritual sense, can be applied to you if you know how to do that, and if you're interested in that. Otherwise, I'm going to just continue the rest of the reading, interpreting it as a spiritual blessing. On the one hand, if this spiritual blessing, going back to those of you who I was talking to when I was talking about how this is an inheritance, something that you inherited from your family, gifts that you inherited from your family, the King of Pentacles reversed is pointing to either a lack of an actual teacher that you can have. So if there's no family member around you that could help you with these things. And if it's not that, it's that you don't feel like there's anyone safe that you can ask these questions. And the Three of Pentacles, responding to that, is basically saying that that's okay. You don't need to have a teacher within your family for you to know or take advantage of these things in the way that you can. So if that's one of the things that you're like, oh, well, there's no one to teach me, so why should I even bother? No, it's there. Engage with it as you will. And that's its own thing. I mean, that's its own thing in that am not getting anything here in terms of advice as to how to pursue that, because it's going to be very individual to your gifts and who you are. But also it's its own thing that, like, that could be its own reading, like how to pursue your personal gifts. I would highly suggest a personal reading for that, because that's deep stuff, and it is deeply personal. I mean, we're talking about like basically genetics, and genetics make us who we are. So it's it's specific to who you are, and your gifts kind of will reflect that. The Page of Swords upwards is, I mean, all pages are novices, and swords are intellect, knowledge. So a novice at knowledge, a novice at something to learn, someone who doesn't know a lot about the thing that they're trying to learn. Reversed, it takes that message to its extreme. So a lack of knowledge taken to the point of like anxiety, like how you don't like that, how little you know about this thing. So you could be the type of person who really needs to know a whole bunch of data about something before you can engage with it. You probably have a whole bunch of questions when you're being directed on how to do something. You like to get things right. That could be true for you. And if that's not true, then it's just that in regards to this blessing, in regards to this thing that you don't want to engage with, part of the fear, part of the anxiety is that you feel like you don't have the proper knowledge, the proper experience to properly engage with this thing. The Three of Pentacles is really acting as a response to most of these reversals. So the Three of Pentacles in response to the Page of Swords reversed is how, okay, if you're scared of not knowing anything, go and learn. There is something about collaboration. So one thing that that could be talking about is seeking classes. Thankfully, we're living at an age and a period where spirituality is kind of having its heyday. So there are a lot of resources available for people who want to learn. Now, yeah, that does mean that there are people out there who either, don't have your best interest. It's more of a selfish profit thing. And if it's not that, then it could also be like a lack of the proper, I'm not trying to criticize, but as you engage with, anything, you will notice that there are people without the proper knowledge necessary to teach that are taking on teaching for the purpose of profit. And so that's always a risk. But the thing is that since this is an intuitive thing, then you are being called to take advantage of that intuition, to take advantage of your wisdom, whatever that is, to seek out the right kind of collaboration, the right kinds of groups in which you can be a part of and learn from and or with. If it's not that, if it's not about seeking classes or seeking some type of tutelage, it could be that you're being asked to, or not yet you're being asked to seek out friends, but rather that there are people out in the world with whom you could establish relationships. Basically, what the Three of Pentacles is saying is that there are other people in the world like you who are wanting to learn, who have the same, maybe not the same exact gifts that you do, but who have gifts themselves that they're trying to hone. And if you were to connect with people like yourself, that there would be a lot of benefit to that with connecting with people like yourself. And you might be wondering, how could it be possible that two people who don't know anything and are trying to learn, how could that be beneficial to them? I don't know. Honestly, I'm not really getting anything specific as to how that could be. Given that this is something spiritual, it could be that the interaction that happens between either the two of you or the group of you, that relationship is what then creates the necessary experiences for everyone involved to gain the necessary knowledge, wisdom to then engage with these things that they're trying to learn about. The last two cards are coming up together for me. So I'm interpreting them together, and they have a couple of things to say. On the one hand, it continues this whole trend that we've had with the first two reversals, the King of Pentacles and the Page of Swords reversed, of addressing a fear. The Tower, I mean, it is a scary card in tarot because it depicts destruction. But if you know tarot, you know that the Tower is usually a destruction that needs to happen. A destruction that needs to happen usually in order for something else to make space for something else that's trying to come in. But a destruction regardless, and it's really a destruction that's going to happen or that can happen regardless of how you feel about it. And so reversed, it could be that it's just a fear. It is a fear that you have of things crumbling down, whether it's that comfort zone that you've stuck to, the relationship that you currently have, just your life as you currently know it, whatever it is. It could be that you fear losing something that you currently have access to if you leave to pursue this other thing. The reversal is indicating that there is no need to fear that destruction. But then we get into one thing that the Tower reverse is saying is that there's no need to fear that thing. Now, it's not that the cards are saying there's no need to fear it because it's not going to happen. It could be that. It could be that it's not going to happen and it's all in your head. However, it's kind of a general rule of thumb that for us to grow, for us to progress, for us to mature, things do have to be left behind. Things do have to be lost. That's just the rule of life. It's just how it goes. So that can't be negated, right? And so it could rather be, it's not that the card is saying it's not going to happen, don't worry, the tower isn't going to happen, but rather you don't have to fear the tower because of who you are. Part of that is this huge blessing that you have, which makes you capable of handling whatever destruction comes your way. But also, what I'm really clearly getting, regardless of the strength that you're like, or whatever power that we're talking about, the Tower reversed is really telling me that that destruction you're afraid of isn't actually going to impact you as deeply, as much as you're afraid it's going to. That being said, the Six of Pentacles reversed. Okay, let's talk about it alone really quickly because besides the single interpretation, like the message that I'm getting by interpreting it by itself, that's very small compared to how it's coming up as an attachment to the Tower reversed. 90% of what the Six of Cups reversed is saying in this spread is attached, is what it's coming through as attached to the Tower. But before I get to that, the message that I'm getting from the Six of Cups reversed individually in this reading is the fear of either like solitude, loneliness, or the breaking apart of a relationship, one that you've had for a long time. Now, individually, this card is saying you have no need to fear that. Someone loyal to you will remain so if they've been loyal to you thus far. And if it's not that, if intuitively you know that once you start to pursue this thing, you are going to lose this relationship, you need to. Anybody who cannot come with you to a life of blessing isn't someone who belongs in your life anyway. Because if they were welcome into this life of blessing, then that would mean that they are a blessing in your life as well. And so that you're being asked to leave them at this point of your life and not bring them with you into your life of blessing is the universe telling you exactly who this person is. Now that's very specific. If that isn't for you, don't pick it up. That message is only for those of you who know you're engaging in a relationship you shouldn't be. Now, I guess that's kind of a spoiler because that's basically what the Tower reverse next to the Six of Cups reverse is saying, is that this relationship needs to fall. Because let's look at them both upwards, okay? If we're pairing them together, we have the relationship, the deep relationship, Cups is emotion, and this union that's happening between them. And yes, it's depicted as children here, but like the fact that it's children here, it's like a childhood thing, so it's a long-lasting relationship regardless of how long it is. That's all it's meant to mean. And so the Tower being the destruction of this relationship. And so the Tower needs to happen and it needs to apply to this relationship. But it's coming up reversed because as much as you're running away from the blessing, you are also running away from the knowledge that this relationship isn't good for you and that it needs to crumble. Now again, that message really intense and really only for those of you for whom it applies. If you're racking your brain right now for who that could possibly be, that message is not for you. That message, again, is only for those of you who, as soon as I started speaking those things, you knew exactly who I was talking about. So that's for y'all. Now, to get into Lenormand, which was an elaboration of what was being said here. Fish, blessings. Incredible that we got the fish card because fish is abundance. And even in the first half, so much abundance that has been coming through in this reading. So again, that blessing that you're hesitant to engage with, it's so big. It's so good. It's such it's such a tool. It's such a thing that can really propel you to something so much better. It's so big. Moon is so many different ways to interpret it here. I am interpreting how moon represents night, and night is darkness. And darkness isn't always a bad thing. It can hide things. Sometimes we need to hide. Sometimes, like night, the darkness allows for our minds to relax because we're not, being stimulated, and we can then go to sleep. So this shrouding the blessing, moon next to fish, moon being darkness, fish being blessings, shrouding your blessings in darkness. So again, going back to that whole interpretation I was giving in the beginning of keeping this a secret. Dog, loyalty, friends, people that are loyal. So they are on the other side of the blessing, on the other side of that darkness, that the darkness being that barrier between your abundance, your blessings, and the people in your life. So that clear distinction where your abundance is on one side of the darkness and loyal people are on the other side is where I was getting that you have to be very careful with who you're allowing into this blessing. Even if this isn't something about money, if we're talking about something spiritual, you have to be very careful with who you're telling about these things. Not everybody is equipped to handle spiritual truths. Not everybody wants to. Not everybody is interested. And in fact, there are some people who will judge you, who will think less of you just for being that type of person. And that's okay. That's not your problem. That's not something for you to worry about or dwell about. They don't have to get it. As long as you get it, that's all that matters. And so dog here, these three cards are really clearly saying to me that just because someone's been loyal to you a really long time, just because you love someone, just because you know that this person is your friend, your family, whatever the case might be, doesn't necessarily mean that they are worthy of you be bringing them into this part of your life. Whether it's financial wealth, stability, or not, whatever it is, there are people who you can welcome, and that's what we were getting with the Three of Pentacles. There are people like you whom you should be engaging with, but there are also people who it's not enough that you've known them for a long time. It's not enough whatever relationship they have with you is. They have to prove that to you that they can handle not only who it is that you are, but what it is that you've got, what it is that you can do. So yeah, just be really careful and intentional with that vetting process, because it's part of the advice here. So you have to do it. I mean, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything that I tell you to do. But the advice being that there's a lot of benefit to be gained from you going through a strenuous vetting process to really determine, to really know that the people you're letting into the secret are worthy of that secret and worthy of you, because you're worthy of that secret. You're worthy of that blessing. So if you're worthy of it, you should really only be surrounding yourself with people who are worthy like you. And maybe that's also part of that blessing of, with you engaging with it, you regarding yourself as such, regarding yourself as someone worthy, someone blessed, and what that really means. And it's not about, we're leaving people behind because we're better than them, because I'm blessed and they're not. No, it is nothing at all like that. Rather, it's just an acceptance that there are people who are happy to be in our lives and who they're an ease to have in our lives because they belong there. And there are people for whom we have to go above and beyond to keep them in our lives because they simply do not belong there. My friend, I really hope that this helped. I will hopefully catch you on the next one. Bye. Hello, Pile 2, and welcome to your reading on Self-Sabotage. Now, before we begin, a couple of disclaimers, the first of which is that I cannot make up any truths for you. If anything that I say during this reading simply isn't true for you, don't take it as a prediction of what's there that you can't see, or me picking up on something that I'm making you aware of. Anything that I say in a reading should be confirmation of what you already know. And if it isn't confirmation of what you already know, if something that I say is new, then it shouldn't be a surprise. It should make sense to what's going on in your life and everything I've said. Not everything, but like what I've been saying in the reading. The second thing is that I cannot make any decisions for you. I am a stranger on the internet reading cards for they're general readings for whoever, anybody has access to them. So they're going to be vague. They're going to be general. And because of that, this isn't the suitable place for you to come and try to make a decision. You have to make your decision. A tarot reading, whether general, better if it's personal, can help you clear up any confusion that you might have in your thoughts or your feelings regarding a decision you have to make. But the reading itself cannot make the decision for you. You have to do that yourself. These things being said, your reading, what your self-sabotage is, it's not so much a bad thing. It's this gift that you have for exploration, for wanting to, it's kind of like a curiosity, but it's more than that. It's different than curiosity. Let me just get into each of the cards. Now, Karmic Path, as the first card, when I was shuffling this deck, I was asking the question of what it is that you're sabotaging. And Karmic Path, the symbol here is Saturn, because Saturn in astrology is associated with karmic paths. Now, me personally, I don't like to use the word karma. I am of the belief or of the feeling or opinion that karma, like yoga and, so many other things, is kind of one of those things that we appropriated. Karma is its own it's an actual thing within its own belief system and school of thought. And we kind of just hijacked it and now use it interchangeably with like consequences. So Karmic Path here, I'm picking up as not your intended path, but rather the path that opens up to all of us when we make the decision to live intentionally, to honor our intuition, the wisdom that we have, whatever it is that elevates us beyond just a normal, for lack of a better term, mainstream life. So I don't like the words karmic path. I'm instead interpreting it here as your life in alignment. That being established, you sabotage your life in alignment by engaging with things, not things, with people, but more specifically, very probably a person whom you know is draining you. We have on the other side the Archetype deck, which, as I was shuffling, I was asking who you are in this situation, how you sabotage this thing. And Vampire in its light attribute, if it comes up upwards, I read the light attribute. If it comes up reversed, I read the shadow attribute. Vampire's light attribute reads, makes you aware that someone or something is draining your life force. So that it's coming up in its light attribute, to me, indicates or highlights how it says makes you aware. So it's not that something is making you aware. I'm sure something did make you aware, but the point is that you are aware of this thing that is draining you, and that is how you are sabotaging your life in alignment. The cards in the center, as elaboration on this matter, are basically saying how with this person you basically keep on making excuses, maybe not for them, but to stick around. Maybe for you, it's kind of like, it's not so much that I'm getting it like, if I just do this thing right, then everything will be okay with this person. Not so much that, as much as it's, if I spend more time with them and I can accomplish this, then we will be okay. And maybe that accomplishment is getting to know them more, or them getting to know you more, or whatever the case is. There's this goal that you keep on sticking to, or you keep on moving the goalpost, or you keep on finding new things to achieve with this person. And if not with this person, then within the relationship that you hold with this person. The difference there being that if you're achieving something with someone, they are putting in an effort towards that, goal. But the other thing where it's you putting in effort, I know I worded it in the relationship, and that's true for any relationship. You're going to have to put in your own part. But what I meant was you're the only one putting in that effort of exploration, of curiosity, and that's what I meant about like curiosity and exploration of like how one of the things that I'm getting is how you feel like you just need to get to the bottom, to the root of why this person acts the way that they do. Why, if you could just figure them out, then they'll see your value and then they'll love you or whatever, or accept you or whatever the case is. And you see how that made no sense when I said it out loud. If I can figure this thing out, then they'll approve of me. The thing is that someone's approval is none of your business. That's up to them. And yeah, sometimes people suck and they aren't fair in their judgments, but at the end of the day, it's not up to us. And because of that, more often than not, other people's opinions and criticisms, because they aren't up to us, really aren't any of our business, and we shouldn't really be worrying about them. But that's neither here nor there, because the point is that the way that you're sabotaging is by you're sticking to someone who you're aware is draining you. And okay, the thing is that that's not as deep as it goes. It's not just that you sticking to this person is, it's just putting your life in alignment on pause. And, it's just a matter of like, maybe your higher self thinks of it this way. No, your higher self would know better. But maybe your ego thinks like, oh, my path, my life in alignment is waiting for me right there. And like, I just need to figure this person out and everything will be great. And once this aspect of my life is good, then my life in alignment will just pick right back. No, hun. You sticking to this person is actively pulling you away from that path that you might have been on and strayed away from, or that is available to you now. And the more you engage with this thing, the less that becomes accessible to you. And the thing is, it's not a matter of just finding your way back to that path. Once you lose access to a path, you're going to have to find an entirely new one, if not an entirely new direction. That's kind of the severity of it here. Why is it that severe? Because we're ending with the world reversed. Not just any ending, the major ending, the last card of the majors. So a conclusion that needs to happen. The conclusion here being the Six of Cups reversed, because the Six of Cups upwards is a long-standing relationship. So reversed, it's that relationship ended. The Hermit depicts your movement away from that relationship that's ended, but the movement isn't towards a complete ending, because the world is reversed. The world upwards would be an ending that is complete, that you can move towards and through to your new life and cycles. But because the world is reversed, that threshold, that portal to that new life where you're leaving all of this behind, it's closed. Why? Because you're still curious. You're not fully ready to leave this relationship behind for whatever reason. It could be lust. If there's no lust involved, it could just be a genuine love, care, whatever the case is. There's just something that about this person that you just can't let them go, even though you're aware, however aware you are, that it is costing you, that it is pulling you away from a life in alignment, from what it is that you actually want to do. Yeah, I that's as much as I want to say about the way that you're self-sabotaging. Let's get into the advice for you with the rest of these cards here as to what you can do, maybe to get back into your life in alignment that you've kind of been made aware of. If not, I don't know. Let's see what comes up. Okay, so there's not really any advice in terms of like how to move past this. Instead, what's coming up here in this portion of the reading is a perspective, things kind of like messages coming through for you to know, in the hopes that you hearing them, seeing it this way, you might get a better understanding of the sticky situation that you're actually in. So full disclosure and kind of a trigger warning, it gets a little rude here. So if you are the type, like if you really aren't ready to leave this person behind, you might want to click off because you might get a little defensive with how I'm going to talk about this person. So just let's just, make that decision now. But okay. Let me start with the Lenormand cards because what they're saying really is at the core of what everything is saying, and it's also the simplest thing to interpret because the tarot portion is saying a whole bunch of things in different ways. So, Anchor depicts or is meant to be where we are situated, where we are at. It usually, if it would be at the end, it would be a destination once we reach that destination, but anchor at the beginning is where you are currently at, which is in this relationship that's draining you. Birds, pests, basically, is how I'm interpreting it here. So instead of birds, even though it's birds here, I'm seeing it as a whole bunch of flies. And dog is that loyalty that you have for this person. Dog is also that person themselves. And so the way that I'm seeing it is you being stuck in this thing that you like, sticking to it, being loyal to this place that you're at despite all of the pests around it. I'm kind of seeing it as you holding on to this. Okay, maybe this is a bad analogy because an animal's innocent and I don't want to do that. But like, I was going to say like you holding on to like a stinky little dog and like it has rabies and like parasites and all types of like diseases, but there you are holding on to it even though it's making you sick and like costing you money to keep it alive. Like, I mean, I as an animal person, I would probably be that dumbass holding the mangy dog. But metaphorically speaking here, you're staying in a place full of pests and risks and things you see as a genuine problem not just to be loyal, but out of loyalty to this person. And if it's not that it's loyalty to this person, it might be that it's just it's just you just stick to things. You don't know how to let go of things, so you just stick to them despite the problems that you see in it. So that's what Lenormand is saying. It's either that you're sticking to something despite the risks of it because of how loyal you are to this person, or your faulty loyalty is being pointed out to, like how you just don't know how to let go of things, so you just stick to them even though they are to your detriment. To get into the tarot portion, these two cards are coming up together, and then these three cards are kind of portioning off together. So it's like two halves, but there's interpretation A and then there's interpretation B for all of the cards, but it neither negates the other. It's just B is in addition to A and A is in addition to B. So interpretation A is that the King of Pentacles is your current place of comfort, this relationship that is sabotaging your life and alignment. And the Five of Pentacles upwards next to that is the definition of that comfort zone. So scarcity. The Knight of Wands, then, if the Knight of Pentacles with the Five of Pentacles is indicating this relationship that is a strain on you, then the rest of the reversals are what you are seeing regarding as truth that you are refusing to engage with. So the Knight of Wands is, among many other things, how I'm getting it in this reading is our intuitive drive. When we allow our intuition, when we put action behind our intuition, so we get an intuitive pull, we put action behind it, we follow that intuitive pull. So then reversed, it's us not acting out on our intuition, us ignoring our intuition. The Wheel of Fortune upwards is the bigger picture beyond just what we can see, just in our small scope of life. How our life, the Wheel of Fortune is all about how our life weaves into with everybody else's life and creates the big picture. It can also be indicative of divinity, of the things beyond the physical realm that's just it. Anything that exists beyond the physical realm. And because it's the wheel of fortune, it can also kind of like fortunes change, the change of fortune, the change of time, of times and tidings. It's change, it's positive change. So the wheel of fortune is, movement, change, the bigger picture, seeing the bigger picture. So then reversed, it's a narrow scope of view, but also no change, a lack, the wheel isn't turning, so there's no movement. The Queen of Cups upwards is a fulfilled heart, an emotional stability that allows for us to process any emotional matter. And when I say any emotional matter, I mean any. So like when you are so emotionally stable that if you've never dealt with this, take my word for it. And if you have dealt with this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you create enough emotional stability that if you have it, you start to bring up like you remember certain things, certain hard things from your past, because you're now capable of remembering it, where in the past you were keeping yourself emotionally safe by not remembering those things. So kind of like that, the Queen of Cups upwards is someone who has an emotional stability that allows for them to take on any emotional matter. Reversed, then, it's an emotional instability that then doesn't allow for us to deal with any emotional matter. So a lack of emotional regulation. I'm not really seeing it as that. It could be that, but instead I'm seeing the Queen of Cups reversed as a blockage of emotional stability. So yeah, sure, when I say that, it does sound like emotional instability. It could be that again, yeah, sure, but instead what I'm seeing it as is the emotional stability that is available to you when you've put this relationship that's draining you past you. Now, that's the whole point of these reversals, is that they are reversed because of what is upwards. What is upwards, the Pentacles cards, which are representing the relationship that you're currently in. So basically, in this interpretation A, as long as the relationship stands, you're not, you're ignoring your intuition, you are maintaining a narrow scope of vision while also refusing to engage with the changes that the divinity and the universe are making available to you. And there is an emotional stability that you're capable of that you cannot know or practice because you are giving so much of your emotional matter to this relationship and to this person. Interpretation B now takes on the King of Pentacles, instead representing yourself and your wealth and your stability. So the stability and the stability that you have access to, whether it's that you know how to do it or that you have the capacity to learn how to be stable, that's prevalent in both interpretations. And that's how true that is for you in terms of advice. You're being asked to be, if you're not aware of that stability that you're capable of, to trust that it's there. So again, the King of Pentacles here then representing the stability that you have, and because you have that stability, you then being able to engage with the hardships being depicted in the Five of Pentacles. The hardship being the leaving of this relationship, because leaving any relationship is hard, even when we know it's hard for us. There's a reason you haven't left it yet, and it's because you recognize the hardship attached to leaving it, whatever that might be. It could be, the emotional labor that it means to get over someone, and that's just so arduous, and all of that. But depending on the relationship, there's a lot more that could be added to what you're processing and maneuvering through if money is involved, and it very well could be because of the Pentacles cards being here at the front, at the beginning. And let's say you're financially dependent on this person, that's a big reason for why you might have been so slow to leave this person behind, because you recognize how leaving this person, the person who's your financial stability, leaving them means leaving the financial stability, and so that means financial lack, and nobody wants to go through that. But you've gotten to the point where the stability that's yours is more valuable to you than, or it's valuable enough to you, and you have a concrete grasp on it enough that you're willing to engage with this hardship and the struggle. When I'm interpreting it this way, then, and these three cards still keep their same meaning, But then I don't know why, but I'm just seeing it in this interpretation how if we're taking firm grasp of the stability that we are capable of, then we could have what it takes to take on any hardship. And so then we can start to unblock these things. So when we have a firm grasp on, what we're capable of, then we are able to put action behind our intuitive pull. Then we can start to grow into a larger scope of life. Sure, beyond your own, but just maybe in leaving this relationship, you'll go out and have experiences that really help you see things in a new perspective. Beyond that, the Wheel of Fortune also being you engaging positively, engaging actively with the changes, the progressions that the universe and divinity are making available to you. And finally, the Queen of Cups upwards, that emotional regulation, that emotional peace, that emotional strength, power, intelligence, whatever you want to call it, that not only are you capable of now, but that's really waiting for you after you've done the work to not only leave this relationship, but process it, in essence, get over it. And I hate wording it that way because it indicates that that's a set goal and that there's a day that you're going to be over it. And it's like, there are days where we can feel like we're over it and then we're going to circle back around to feeling like shit about it. And it's a cycle. Healing isn't linear, it is cyclical, like cycles. Oh my god. So yeah, that's pretty much what I've got for you. That it's not so much advice on like this is how you move forward. It's more so this is what you kind of need to see to help you do what you need to do. You have stability that you're capable of. And if right now you're like, I don't feel stable, I don't know what you're talking about, then what you're being kind of told is you won't learn it until you go out there and like actually try to learn it. If you continue to stick in places of comfort and stability, despite what that stability is costing you, and that stability is just that comfort zone that we were talking about, not a real stability, just a comfort that you're maintaining despite what you're being told about that comfort not being an actual comfort. That you have the capacity to deal with those things. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be easy, but that it isn't impossible. And that's what's important, that you are very capable of this task that you very well might feel is impossible. And if not impossible, then just difficult. And beyond that, beyond the fact that you're capable of handling this hardship, there's just this promise of peace, of better things waiting for you outside of this thing where you're currently at, that's costing you, that's full of pests, that's full of issues and things that you to some degree recognize you are over and ready to leave behind. My friend, I hope that this helped, and I also hope that I catch you on the next one. Bye. Hello, Pile 3, to this reading on your self-sabotage. Now, before we begin, a couple of disclaimers, the first of which is that I cannot create any truths for you, make up any truths for you. What that means is if I say anything during this reading that simply isn't true for you, don't try to force it to your circumstance. And also, don't let it negate the rest of the reading. Very often, because this is a general reading meant that it's open to anybody, everybody, things are meant to be vague. And sometimes things are said specifically to a specific group of people, if not a person, and it's meant to help that person, but that doesn't negate the reading for you. It's just take everything else and just leave that bit that isn't for you. The second thing is that I cannot make any decisions for you. I am just a stranger on the internet putting these readings out for anybody to watch. And although I do hold the intention that they find who they need to, at the end of the day, that's all I am, just a stranger on the internet. You shouldn't be giving me the power to make any type of decision for you. In fact, I have found that tarot isn't so much for making decisions. It can definitely help you in clarifying any confusing thoughts or feelings you might be having about the situation. and in that way, in clarifying those things, help you make a better decision. But it can't make the decision for you. That has to ultimately fall on you. These things being said, let's get into your reading. There's pretty much two camps of you, and you could be part of both camps. Camp A, it's okay. There's something that you have that's yours to nurture and take care of. Whether that's a talent or a gift or a business, or it could be the distinction there, the spectrum there being that it could be something tangible, like a business, something that you have to manage and take care of. It could be a child, and if it is a child, this reading is about to get really intense, because I am in essence going to this reading is in essence about how you parent. And if that's simply not something you're open to listening to right now, click off this reading. But that is a possibility. If you're a parent, that doesn't immediately mean that that's what we're talking about. It could be these other things. So stick around. But you'll know if that's what we're talking about with the further clues that we get into with the rest of these cards. But the point is that there's something that you have that's your responsibility to nurture and take care of, and there's a mishandling of that. There's too much of your perspective, your will that you're trying to implement into this thing that is really meant for you to just make sure it's okay, not so much police and dictate how it does things or how things go. So if it is your own business, obviously that's kind of like a paradox, kind of like, how am I supposed to not have decisions over all of the things? It might not be about that. Obviously, if it's your own business and it's a small business where it's only you, of course, everything is up to you. In that case, it would then be a relinquishing of control, because that's what this whole reading is about. Your self-sabotage is a need for total control. If this is about a business where the business itself has to remain in your total control, then what you need to relinquish desire for control over is the results of what you put out. What you do within the business and what the business is your business, but how people react to it and how people receive it is their own, not yours. You can only do so much to have things go your way, and that's true for all of you here. There seems to be a big highlight in all of these cards as to there being not a harshness, but definitely a lack of tenderness where it's called. Let me word it that way. So to get into the specific cards, we start with nature spirits answering the question of what it is that you're sabotaging. And nature spirits are, in essence, nature itself, nature personified. So think of like if you're into, Greek mythology is so well known. So like the naiads and the triads, those beings that were the personification of like rivers and trees and things like that. So this idea of a being that cannot be tamed, a being that is wild by nature, a being that is not meant to be kept or controlled or policed, in essence. It's something that's there and that you can take care of, like as a human living in tandem with wilderness. Like back in the days of Greek mythology, the naiads they weren't like, they were like regarded as demigods, so not on the same level as humans, but there was this understanding that if you took care of a certain tree, or if you took care of, you didn't pollute a certain stream or whatever the thing is, like you would be regarded well by those nature spirits. So this idea of living in relationship with something that isn't meant to be controlled, you're meant to cohabitate with it, not control it. If this is kind of like a internal gift, like a talent, or if it's not, well, no, I guess it's true for all of you. nature spirits being what is defining the thing that you're sabotaging, and therefore being the thing that is struggling to develop and blossom because of, in essence, what you're doing to sabotage it. Nature spirits is indicating of how this thing that you have and that's yours really has the potential to be something great. Kind of like how a flower out in nature, if properly pollinated and properly taken care of, can turn into a whole grove of that flower. The same with a tree, a grove of trees. If a river isn't, like, if all of the conditions are right, a river can swell and grow into like a big thing. So this thing, like nature, if left untouched and like not sabotaged and left to its own thing, can be like, it can be abundant, it can be wild. So that nature spirit is coming up as the defining card for this thing that you're sabotaging. Yes, it indicates just how abundant this thing has the potential to be, but also that it is something divine. So if you aren't the type of person who believes in divinity, and or if you do but it's not so much that you believe in spirits or like something like deities or things like that, then just regard it as life itself, as how this really is something that is meant for you, that in your hands it has the capacity to really be something, but that what you're doing, the way that you're handling it, is in essence stifling it. And that's what we're looking into here today. So moving beyond nature spirits being what's defining the card that's defining the thing that you're sabotaging, and that means that thing that you're sabotaging, what you're holding, is a big thing. Mother in its reversed form, meaning in its shadow attribute, reads: smothering or abandoning children, instilling guilt in children for becoming independent. So again, if you are a parent and you feel called out by those words, then okay, yeah, this reading is a little bit about the way that you're parenting. Now, I am not a parent myself, so I can only speak as a child, as someone who has had a parent, and we all have had parents, right? So, I mean, obviously not all of us. Oh my God, blanket statements are so difficult, but regardless of the fact, whatever your circumstance might be with actual parents, the point of mother in its shadow attribute is how a desire for control, in essence, destroys the thing that we're trying to control, regardless of what the intentions are behind that want for control. Because sometimes we call it love. Sometimes we say, I just love this thing, this person so much that I just want what's best for it. And the thing about that, especially when it's a person, whether you're a kid or a person, any other person, is that at the end of the day, like I said with that disclaimer, the decision is theirs to make for themselves, and yours are yours to make. Now, obviously, that isn't true if we're talking about a toddler. If a toddler decides that they want to stick a fork into a power outlet, obviously, let's be reasonable. Please, let's be reasonable here. I'm obviously only talking about children who are becoming adults, young adults who are becoming a little more independent. And that's always like a gradient, right? Like some kids start to become super independent really young. And I mean, really smart kids who start to want to become independent at like 13, I can see how that would be a problem, because it's like, you're still 13, you still don't know jack shit. But you can't tell them that because they're so smart. The point is that if it really is up to you to decide, and this is only for those of us or for those of you who are parents, like, this reading is only about your parenting. If when you sit down and you take stock of the way that you relate to your kid and the relationship that you guys have, if the relationship that you guys have reflects your control, you got to be real honest about that, then you're being asked, not only by these cards, but by life itself, divinity, whatever you believe in, to really pay attention to what that's costing you. Not only you, but the child or children in that case as well. Now, if when you do that, or if you do that and you're like, no, like I know that I'm doing my best to whatever the case is, like either not be controlling or to instill in them some independence. Like if that just isn't true for you, if this mother and its shadow attribute, if you aren't the type to smother your children, if you're not the type, if you're not instilling guilt in them for being independent, then like I said in the disclaimer, don't allow for me to make up that truth for you. In that case, if you are a parent and you're just not this type of parent, then you are responsible, because you're still here at this reading, you are responsible to then look at other areas of your life where your desire for control is stifling that thing. That's all I'm gonna say about that. So moving on beyond that whole message, that little spiel for parents, for all of you here, mother and its shadow attribute, again, like I said, it's how your desire for control is the thing that is directly, that's your self-sabotage. You self-sabotage by how much control you desire. The thing, how that is being defined by these cards in the center. Two things that I'm getting. On the one hand, both could be true. Only one of these things could be true. You decide. On the one hand, it could be that your desire for control comes from the things that you've learned in life or through experiences or whatever the case is, where the experiences of your life have shown you that you need to do things yourself, that more often than not, when you take care of things, they're done better. And that might be because of the incompetence of the people around you in your life up until whatever point that was, or if they're still there, whatever the case is. What's being stated is, again, that like you've been shown so consistently that your way is the best way, or maybe not the best way, but it is consistently good. You provide results. If it isn't that, then it's skepticism. If it's a person, if it's a relationship, you're skeptical of that person's capacity to take care of themselves, to do things on their own. If this is a business or something else that's not a person, something that you're kind of overseeing, you are skeptical that this thing, you're skeptical of its potential, or you're skeptical of your capacity to handle this thing, or skeptical of it itself and its potential, or skeptical of your capacity to be involved, engaged, if not leading this thing that we're talking about. Really, I could go into, just really quickly to go into the individual cards to just kind of prove my point here. Shattering Robonoids are in the show that they're from. These just robots that go around kind of like patrol drones. So it's like a dystopian society, and when the character is running away from jail because he's been jailed there, these are the things that come looking for him, and they kind of like scan around. So they're just like robots that scan around and make sure that everything's going according to plan. Kind of like the way that I'm seeing it here is like the status quo. They basically defend the status quo. They make sure that nothing is out of place, and if it is, they take care of it. And that's how, in essence, you are being regarded by this thing that you are handling. Again, whether that's a relationship, a person, or a thing, that's how you're being regarded by it. Now, if it's a business, obviously a business isn't sentient and it can't regard you as such. But then what's being said is that you do this. You do this thing where you hyper micromanage, micro-focus on all of the details, and in doing so, you might be missing other things, or what's being said is that your attention is misplaced. Your attention would be better placed elsewhere. But I digress. Bubbled gem. It's bubbled. It's protected. It's kept safe. In the show, these bubble gems are put into like this basement area to be dealt with later. That is grossly oversimplified. There's so much more that goes into it. But the point is that they bubble them to keep them safe and out of harm's way, and just, we'll deal with it when we have the chance. So I'm not really getting that you're procrastinating or you'll deal with it later, but just that idea of, you know what, I have like things to handle. Let's just keep this thing safe. And if I keep it safe, then I don't have to worry about it. And that's just not true. But moving on to Velma is where I was getting that skepticism, that idea of looking at things through your lens and being really difficult about switching your perspective to see someone else's. It's not that Velma's that way per se, but her propensity for logic and fact. It serves her really, really well. I mean, it solves the case most of the time. That's why she's the smart one. But in some cases, it does stand in the way, because there have been the rare instances where the gang does face something that's actually supernatural, and her skepticism is kind of called out because it stands in the way. So that's kind of what I was getting from that card, where the skepticism really stands in the way. Now, side note, I didn't mention it earlier, but I'm remembering it now that I'm talking about the Velma card. If what we're talking about, if the thing that you're sabotaging, if the thing that Nature Spirits is talking about is a spiritual gift, skepticism, or if not spiritual gifts, then like just spirituality, just believing in something that isn't tangible, then part of your self-sabotage is the way that you cling to logic, the way that you cling to, I only believe what I can see and touch, and if I can't see it or touch it, then it isn't real. Then how do you describe feelings? How do you love? Do you know how to love? Is love not real to you because you can't touch that love? Like, are you serious? I'm not gonna call you out. I'm sorry if you're feeling called out. The thing is, the fact that you, one, if that's true for you, you have a propensity for spirituality, and if not that, then to see things beyond what's in front of you. And therefore, that skepticism, although inherent and important because it's there for a reason, like I'm not going to tell you get rid of that skepticism and never be skeptical about anything again, no. But rather, it's time to accept, or, I mean, you're a control freak, so obviously you're not going to listen to me when I say that. But the point is that if, again, this is only for those of you for whom this is something spiritual, like skepticism, it really is important in spirituality, because there are a lot of people who pull shit out of their ass and are really just not like, they don't mean to lead you astray, but they don't have it fully figured out yet, but they're willing to take on a leadership position anyway and then lead people through their fumbled mess. And that's true anywhere. But like, so skepticism is important. It's not about getting rid of the skepticism, but rather that you also, if you're going to be skeptical, you also have to be skeptical about that skepticism and about yourself. Like, you also have to apply it to yourself. And part of that is understanding that there are times and places when we are shown that we can put that skepticism down, put it to the side, and try to see things from a different perspective. And in doing so, learning, proving to ourselves that we can not only learn how to take on a new perspective, but how to stand in it, and in that way widen your scope of understanding and wisdom and knowledge. That's a lot to be said for the Voma card, and honestly that could be applied for all of you, where it's not just for those of you for whom this is spiritual, where like you need, and again, you're a control freak, so you don't need to do anything. I'm trying to be very careful with how I word things with you. But just, again, apply it to yourself. Apply that need for control to yourself. Control yourself when you are over here trying to control everything. You want to control things so bad, control yourself. Okay? These three cards, they're not giving me anything. Like, usually each individual card will give me an individual message, and then they're also all saying something together. In this instance, they really are all speaking together, not so much individually, but let me tell you about each individual card's meaning so that you understand what they're all saying. And what they're all saying is, in essence, what I've been talking about this whole time. Because the Four of Pentacles is a grasping something, and because it's money, the tangible, physical realm, it is a clinging to the physical realm. Again, that skepticism that we were talking about with Velma, like it could be a clinging to just a logical understanding of the world, and that is standing in the way of what you are trying to be guided towards, which is a now more intuitive understanding of the world. If it isn't about that, going back to that business, if it's about a business thing and you are like reeling because you have no control over like the income that's coming in, or whatever the case is, it's like you're grasping onto tangible physical results. And in doing so, in grasping onto whatever it is that you're grasping to, what's interesting is that the Four of Pentacles in the traditional Pamela Coleman Smith imagery, it depicts a guy on a throne, and in a lot of ways, he emulates, tries to impersonate the emperor, because he has a throne and there's like something behind him. And the thing about the emperor is that like his power cannot be denied because he has an actual throne and he has the scepter, and he has like he's all armored and he's high above on a throne that's been built in a high above place, like suitable for an emperor. And behind him is like this huge valley, and it's like it's power. It's an image of power. Meanwhile, in the Pamela Coleman Smith imagery, the Four of Pentacles, it's just some dude who maybe found a crown, like in a costume shop, and he put it on, and he put a chair on a roof, and he's sitting there, and it's not this picture of power behind him. It's just like his neighborhood. And so this idea of, I'm not saying that you have delusions of grandeur, but kind of like that, where you're really misunderstanding or misinterpreting the truth of the matter. So if it is back to that whole business thing, maybe you're expecting billions on your first month of starting a business. Maybe that's not true. Maybe I'm exaggerating there a little bit. But the thing is that you're being asked to be a little more realistic about your expectations for what it is that you're doing. If it isn't a business, then okay, so back to that whole, like, yes, if it isn't a business, then still apply it as how you need to be a little more realistic about what it is that you're handling. And maybe it's the height of your expectations that's a big part of why you're struggling, or why what's flaring up that control, that need for control. It's because you have such high expectations that, like, and expectations that this thing that you're handling just cannot meet right now. And that's what's disappointing you, and that's what's flaring up this need for control, because you feel if you start to control it and things go your way, then this thing can meet your expectations. And these cards are being like, no, that's just not going to happen. There's nothing that you can do to force this thing to be and meet the height of your expectations. There has to be a reality check in regards to what it is that you're handling, whatever it is, and apply the expectations to what it is. Why am I saying all of that? Because the whole point of me talking about the traditional image in the Pamela Coleman Smith, the whole idea of me talking about that is because in that image, the Four of Pentacles holds a quote unquote throne. It's like a makeshift throne. And why that's important to me in this reading is because we see a seat in the Two of Swords, and so like a seat, like a throne where someone sits, and we have a Queen of Pentacles, a queen who sits on a throne, but there's no throne in this card. That's irrelevant. Why the seat is important, why I'm clinging on to the seat analogy here, is because kind of like how that imposter in the Pamela Coleman Smith imagery Four of Pentacles, he's trying so hard, he wants to be the emperor so bad, but he's not. You want the seat of power so bad, but it is simply not yours yet. And it doesn't have to be a seat of power. The seat of power is just the goal that you have in mind, the expectation that you have in mind for this thing. You want that so bad. And the thing is, you want it so bad that you're and putting so much effort toward creating it that you're not seeing how all of these efforts are like making that expectation a complete impossibility now, but also not destroying completely, but stifling, getting in the way of this thing that this responsibility that's been placed in your hands, whatever nature spirits is talking about, right? So that idea of you want the seat so bad, but it's not there for you. And the two cards on the sides of it being reversed, giving that idea of like the seat isn't there. It's not, you don't have access to that seat, to those goals, to that thing that you want, and that's driving that need for control. You just don't have, you're not meant to have access to that right now, not quite yet. The Two of Swords upwards is taking the time to consider all of the facts, everything that needs to be considered before moving forward. Reversed, then, it's refusing to take any time to consider anything. And that could be applied in so many ways, but within this context, it's because of what you're holding on to, because of your grasp on your way and doing things your way and getting the things that you want. You have no space to consider anything else, anything beyond what your goal is right now. The Queen of Pentacles on the other side is I mean, the Queen of Pentacles upwards is a picture of abundance. And not just any type of abundance, but abundance as a blessing. Because the Queen of Pentacles is someone who is focused on her business and her business alone. Now, if we are talking about a business here, when I say she's focused on her business and her business alone, I don't mean a specific business. I mean just what's hers to worry about, and she doesn't worry about what she has no control over. The Queen of Pentacles upwards has a clear understanding of what is within her purview to look over, to nurture, to take care of, and what isn't. And because she's so good at that, because she minds her borders, where her power is and where it's not, and because she really puts her all into taking care of what is within her purview, the universe blesses her with abundance to match the abundance of attention that she gives to what is hers to give attention to. Reversed, then, it is misplaced attention, which is what this whole reading is about. It's that abundance not being able to come through because you're showing, in essence, to the powers that be, whatever they are, that you cannot handle the responsibility you have been given. Now, if you are feeling called out by that, I am really sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. It's just that this complete need for control demonstrates how you don't really believe, again, what we said in the beginning, that the potential for this thing that you're handling, or your capacity for it. Because if you did feel confident in either this thing that you're handling or yourself, you wouldn't feel so controlling. You would really understand that you don't need to control so much. In fact, because of the way all of the cards that came out and the way that this message is landing, I would bet that there have been several demonstrations, several moments of proof and evidence to you that you don't need to be so controlling. But for whatever reasons, for however justified those reasons are for why you need that control, you have applied your control. And obviously, I keep on beating a dead horse about it. It is time for you to move beyond that. It's time for you to really see how your need for control is an act of self-sabotage. These things being said, let's get into the advice for you on how to handle this self-sabotage. Okay, so this message is a little paradoxical, so I'm gonna try my best to word it as clearly as possible. But in essence, I spoke on it a little bit earlier in the reading, and when I did, I mentioned that part of the reading was only for a specific part of you, but it's looking like it applies to all of you. That idea of the reasonings for why you need so much control, for why you take on a controlling position in anything that you take on, it stems from your life. It stems from life experiences. It stems from your childhood, basically. Now, might not have been your entire childhood, but there was definitely something in your life at some point in the past that has set this precedent for why you now need so much control. And the first thing that's clearly being said is that you are not that child anymore. That the realities that were true back then when this precedent was set isn't the reality anymore. And in fact, you, as an adult or wherever you're at, have more control over your circumstance than you did back then. And that is really important to try to wrap your head around when we're trying to engage with the healing of things that are long standing, especially childhood stuff. The second thing that's being said, and here's the paradox, is that you also need to regard yourself as being born anew. Now, if you are ex-evangelical or evangelical, I'm not talking about being born again as a Christian, but if you understand that, then you'll understand this metaphor. What's being said here is that you need to, this self-sabotage that we're talking about, the need for control, it is a symptom of how you have not processed, or how you have not fully processed, or how you still have a lot of work to do in the processing of what it was that you went through that set the precedent for this control. And that the advice for you, what's being said here clearly, is that until you really sit down and deal with those things, this self-control will persist. And beyond that, if you do the work to process those things and close these cycles, and not close them in the sense of like they're never going to come back up again. Healing isn't linear. We always cycle back to things, but stepping into new cycles, learning how to do things in new ways so that your life, and so that you can have life experiences beyond the ones that you currently know that are enabling that need for control. Basically, what I'm saying is the work that you're being called to do and processing, and in essence, accepting that is over, and that who you are today is in your own hands. The self-sabotage, the need for control, that's why it's coming up. It's coming up because it's the brightest, maybe that's the wrong word. It's the strongest piece of evidence that you have of all of this unprocessed emotional matter. And that in doing so, if you do the work to start to process these things and heal these things, that need for control will also subside. And that comes, and I speak from experience here, you start to relinquish a need for control when you start to realize how little control you have in the first place. And I know that sounds terrifying, but believe me when I tell you, you do come around to a place through the proper experiences, but you have to allow yourself to have those experiences. You do come to a place where you understand that having as little control as we do have is actually a relief. Kind of like when we were kids, if we had the right type of parents, we didn't really have to worry about much because they were taking care of things. And so that's what the son here is saying. That's that whole paradox of like looking at yourself as a newborn, being born again, because you kind of have to cycle back into a space of like kind of how you back before you needed all of this control, where you can relax and let go of the reins a little because you understand that you don't need to hang on to the reins at all times. Basically, in essence, that's the message there, that it's time for you to put effort into dealing with what's at the root of this need for control. What set that precedent? Who taught you that you needed to, like, or it's not that they taught you that you needed to control anything, but whose negligence, whose incompetence even is it that showed you that you needed to take control of things? And in dealing with those things, in processing those things, in learning how to see yourself as someone who reacted to that and who is still perpetuating that reaction with this need for control, then in seeing those things truly and clearly, you liberate yourself from those things hold on you. If you haven't experienced that yet, I can see how that sounds nonsensical or hard to believe, but it is true. The more you talk about something, the more you know something, the more you process something, the less strength it has, the less influence it has over you. And you really don't start to become aware of that influence that it has over you until you start to do these things. So it can feel weird at first to talk about something that's so obvious. It can feel counterproductive to talk about something you've worked so hard to either repress or quote unquote move on from. But the fact that you're perpetuating that reaction, that need for control, means that you aren't actually over it, that you actually do need to talk about it because it's influencing so much of what you're doing today. To get into the specific cards, we'll start with Lenormand. Bear is strength. So a demonstration of our own strength. But it's very interesting to me that in this deck, Bear is shown as okay, so in this Lenormand deck, our central character here, she's in all of the cards. And so usually Bear only depicts a bear, but because our character has to appear in all of them, they add like a little caricature, like a little moment to make the card not only fun, but so that it involves her as well. And what I love about that fact is that here, Bear, she's hiding from this family of bears. So it seems kind of whimsical and fun and light, but in actuality, that's part of where I was getting that message of like the harshness of the past, where it might have been that you felt like you needed to hide yourself and your truth and parts of your own life from your family. Or if it's not, that's not true. It's rather that just this separation from your family. Whatever that might have been, where it's just like you recognize that they didn't think the way that you did and that you had a more logical mind, and so you had to bear more responsibility, and so that type of separation. And if not that, then just some type of just something that you avoid. So kind of like avoiding processing what, again, everything that we've, the avoidance that we were talking about. So Bear having this depiction of like avoiding, of like kind of hiding from something, however that applies to you. But in essence, the Bear card being a demonstration of your strength. House in this reading coming through to me as yourself, you yourself being the house. And like a house has to be maintained through chores and maintenance and all types of things. You have to take care of a house. You have to take care of yourself. And so at the center, you taking care of your house, you taking care of yourself, you taking care of what's at the root of what's ailing you. And in this case, what's ailing you, the symptom of that ailment is this need for control. And what that's a symptom of is whatever it is that we're talking about here, whatever was harsh in the past that set the precedent for this need for control. And bouquet, at the end, bouquet is a blessing, bouquet is abundance, and it's coming after that commitment to maintaining, to working on ourselves, keeping ourselves good and safe, dealing with whatever we need to deal with. And when we do that, kind of like how I was saying earlier, we relinquish a need for complete control when we start to realize how little control we actually do have. And that does, it's not that we have no control. We do have control. But the point is, you get to that place when you start to look at the bigger picture about how when we start to be a little less selfish, and it's not a bad thing to be selfish. It's quite a normal human thing to be selfish. But I mean, you're here at a tarot reading. You know that there's more to life than just being selfish and just focusing on yourself. And so follow that thread. Go and learn what it really means to decenter the self, and to learn what it means to see yourself as just part of a bigger picture. Whatever that means for you, again, relinquishing the seat that we were talking about earlier, right? Where you want this thing so bad, and the hyperfixation on doing things your way, on the control, on this expectation, on this goal that you have, all of that reflects that control, right? And as you do the work to process what's at the root of that need for control, you will start to loosen that grip. And as you loosen your grip, that's when the blessings and the abundance that you want so bad will come. Frustrating, I know. I've been where you're at. I've received this message of like, you need to relax a little. And the thing is, I get why you can't relax. I get that when people tell us to relax, it's infuriating, because it's like, how can I? But the thing is that you have to, because of the abundance that you want. Now, you don't have to do anything. Again, like I said, you're a control freak. So hearing that word might be really triggering or just difficult. But the point is that if you really truly want that abundance that you're seeking so bad, it is going to take a relinquishing of control. Paradoxical, I know, but that's the truth of it. Your desires, that's like your intensity of desire for this thing and expectation, the goal, whatever it is, that's a good thing. That you care so much about something that you want what's best for it, that's a good thing, and it can be applied properly. But you are being told that the way that you do it specifically, it is stifling, and that you need to then learn how to apply a more tender touch, because you do know how to get results. You are good at having control. It's not that you're bad at that, but if you really want the results that you want, then this is what you need to hear. If you want the things that you want, you need to stop doing the things that you're doing. Point blank. And I know that that's harsh, but the thing is that the topic itself is harsh. You knew what you were signing up for, and you've stuck around so far. So you know that to some degree, whatever degree, It's true. What's good about all of it is that you're getting really bright depictions of what's waiting for you at the other side of all these efforts. Because, I mean, yeah, sure, bouquet, but also the sun and the Four of Wands. And why are these two cards important to me? It's like, why am I so excited about these cards? Now, let's start from the beginning. The Two of Pentacles reflects, it's a parallel to the Two of Swords that we were getting in the last part, where in twos, especially these two cards, the Two of Pentacles and the Two of Swords, perfectly depict weighing two things, weighing two options. In the Two of Swords, it's taking the time to weigh two things in our mind, contemplating things, doing all the pros and cons, really sitting with how we think about things and then moving forward with whatever we come out from that. But in the Pentacles, it shows what it looks like to handle two separate things. If we're handling two things mentally, we can kind of just sit down and just focus on that thing, and that's really all it takes for us. I mean, barring any different minds work differently, but my point is that it's going to be easier to hold two things mentally than it's going to be to hold two things with your actual physical hands in the physical world. Now, if they're small things, then obviously it's not going to be hard to hold two things. But if you're contemplating, we're talking about big things here. So like contemplating two jobs, contemplating two places to live, like something big like that. Like that's big, right? You can do that in your mind. You can contemplate two things. It might be difficult, it might take some effort, but the thing is that you can do it. Can you carry two homes? Can you carry two places of work with your hands? No, kind of impossible. And so that's the point, is that once it's physical, it does become harder. Once the internal stuff starts to surface into the material realm, we start to then realize just how difficult it is. What am I saying? Think of the last time you barely slept, or you barely ate and then you had to go to work, or you had to go do something that you had to do. And think about how much better that experience would have been if you had given yourself what you needed to handle that. If you've given yourself the proper sleep, the proper meal, whatever the case is, if you had been better equipped, you would have handled it better. But the point is, because, in your mind, you're like, yeah, I can do it, no problem, it's fine. But now that you're there, now that you're actually doing it, now you're actually seeing and feeling this decision that you made in your mind. So again, when it's mental, it's a little bit easier to hold. But once you're actually experiencing and living out what's in your mind, again, this need for control, all of those things that you're not processing, the Two of Pentacles is basically saying that the internal turmoil is starting to surface in a way that you're noticing it in your everyday life. Whatever that means. It could be like, it's a physical thing where you're just feeling more tired, you're feeling sore, you're losing your voice. Or it could be a little more extreme where it's like impacting your mood. It's impacting your state of mind to like where maybe you're having a bit of a depressive episode or whatever the case is. The point is that the internal stuff, the internal turmoil is manifesting physically. And the thing about the figure in the Two of Pentacles is that he's kind of out of balance. And if he were to put one of these things down and focus all of his attention on just one thing, kind of like how we were seeing with the Queen of Pentacles, how she's blessed when she focuses on the one thing, but here you are being like, nah, I can handle two things. Everything's telling you to not take on more than you need to. Again, that whole, your attention is better placed somewhere else, but here you are being like, no, I can spread myself thin. It's fine. I can just kill myself doing this. It's fine. No, hun. You're being told, not only for your own health, but for the sake of this thing that you're responsible for, do what's best for it and for yourself, and stop putting all of this attention in more places than you can put it. What's being said is that in you relinquishing control over this thing, in you relinquishing some of that attention, you can then place it elsewhere. You can then channel that energy somewhere else where it's better suited. Maybe even starting to take care of these physical things that we're talking about, the physical manifestations of that turmoil, whatever it is, where if it's costing you your sleep, maybe not worrying about this so much, maybe backing up and relinquishing a little bit of control and maybe letting someone else take control, whatever it is, anything that allows for you to relax a little bit, do it. Because again, it's starting to manifest physically. Moving on. the sun next to the Six of Cups reversed, because the Six of Cups upwards is, among very many other things, childhood and long-standing things. So the Six of Cups reversed, in essence, and especially because it's in the center, is the representation of that thing in the past that was bad or harsh or difficult, that set the precedent, that set your need for control. And on either side of it, two good things. The sun, I mean, it's a baby. He's coming out of a lush garden and he's ready to take on the world because he's the child of the sun. And I mean, it's not specifically that, but kind of like the sun just wakes up. I mean, it doesn't wake up, you know, it rises in the morning and it just does its thing. And it doesn't matter if it's cloudy, you know that the sun is out, and it's a thing. Like, the sun is out, it's going to do its thing. I'm interpreting it here as that clear departure from this Six of Cups energy. Again, a clear departure, an intentional departure from, and liberation from, that thing in the past that was harsh. And again, it's not about completely forgetting it. That it's not about that. It's just processing it to the point where it loses its control over us. It loses its hold and influence over us. On the other side, a couple things that I want to say about it. The Four of Wands is traditionally accepted to be depicting a wedding. And what's wonderful about that is that a wedding is a new thing that's starting. It's a new cycle being born. So both of these cards on either side of the Six of Cups reversed being cards of bright new beginnings. And that's so exciting. That's such a great thing, because here you are in turmoil and all of this need for control, and you're disappointed, and that's why you're exerting all of this control. And what you're being told is, when you relinquish some of that control, you're going to start experiencing what it is that you're desiring so bad: success, relief, bright new beginnings. But what is costing you these things is that need for control. And again, all of these cards, what they're saying is, like, it's understandable why you need control. We get it. We understand it. It's what happened was very real, and your reaction to it is justified and valid. But it's not going to get you what you want. And if you want what you want, then again, clearly, you need to stop doing these things. I keep on repeating the same thing. Moving into the Page of Swords reversed, is basically, that card specifically is what was telling me that you're not a little kid anymore. Because the Page of Swords upwards is a novice. And because the swords are all about knowledge and intellect, then someone who hasn't learned enough about what they're trying to learn about. So for an example, think of your favorite hobby or something that you know how to do, and then try to remember the very first time that you tried to do that thing versus how you can do that thing now, and how the ways in which you do things now reflect everything that you have learned about that thing since. So the Page of Swords represents who we are before we know how to do things. It's a lack of knowledge, which can be exciting. Sometimes that's the best place to be, because, you know, it's if we're like the type of person who likes to learn things, then that's an exciting thing, because it's like, oh cool, a brand new thing to learn. But how I'm looking at it here, is kind of a reflection of the new beginnings spoken of in the Sun and the Four of Pentacles. Because the page is meant to be a novice, pages are also meant to depict children. So again, look, kind of like the child in the sun, born anew, being a child again, and reversed then being like, you are not that child that you were in the past. But also, there's really, this is really only applies if you have an anxiety of, like, once you relinquish control, then you have no power. That anxiety, that's part of it. You have to go through having no power again. And that sounds scary, because in the past, when you had no power, things were really bad. And when you had no control, the people who were in control maybe abused that and showed you that other people in control is a bad thing. And that's why you so badly want control. The thing is that until you are shown that other people, that not everyone is like the people who showed you that you needed to be in control, that's what you need to learn. You need to see that there are people who are very good at being in places of leadership, very good at handling responsibility, very good at controlling things like yourself. And that you can take that as much as good as you are at the role of leader, of being in control, you now have to learn what it means to take the backseat and let someone else do it, not for their sake, although because what we were talking about since the beginning is this thing that you're handling, yes, you do have to relinquish the sense of control for the sake of that thing, that whatever it is, whether it's a person, a business, you do have to relinquish control so that thing can bloom and blossom and become its perfect best self. As we were saying, it's huge, it has the potential to be great. Let it be great, let it do its thing. You've been placed there to watch it and make sure it's okay, so do so, but you're also meant to allow for it to be its own thing. And that is all true. Yes, great, fantastic. But the whole point, the medicine here in this reading isn't meant to benefit that thing that you're responsible for. It's meant to benefit you. The whole point of all of this is to show you what it means to relax, to not have to be in control. You have to, life is trying to show you that there's more to life than positions of tension where like, oh God, I have to worry about all of these things, because that's what it means to be in control. That's what it means to be in a position of leadership. You do have to worry about things. That's just what it means. And so if you're going to be good at that, then there also has to balance. There also has to be space for relaxation, for a relinquishing of control. If you're going to have control in some spaces, there have to be spaces where you can go where you do not have to be in control. Spaces that you can go into where you can be safe and just relax. And until you learn how to do that, until you let go of that control and go out and see that those things can happen, you're not going to see that they exist. I know this one was harsh and real direct, and I hope that I did it justice, because I can genuinely see and feel like you're so powerful. You have such a great capacity. These blessings that are coming in for you are a reflection of that you deserve these things, and that you deserve these things mean that you've put in enough hard work. You've worked hard enough, and it's not that hard work is what earned you these things, but okay, you've worked hard. Please learn what it means to relax now. Otherwise, what are you working hard for? What is it all actually for if you don't actually get to benefit from the fruits of that? If this thing that you're responsible is gaining you enough fruit for you to relax into. Obviously that idea of relaxation is going to be drastically different applying to each of your circumstances is going to be vastly different depending on where you're at. So if like you're a business owner, obviously, and a small business owner, you know, that's what's paying your bills, like there's not much room for relaxation. But if that's true for you, then your need for control here is only creating more tension for you. And the relinquishing of some of that control will gain you some type of relief that's available to you and that you really need right now. And that's true for all of you. You need this relief. You need to learn how to relax. You need to learn that there's more to life than controlling things and being in control and things going your way. I really hope that this helped, and I hope that I didn't scare you away and that I catch you at another reading. Bye.